I hope when you noted all the things that Chicago is doing as a city as it relates to having an environmental/climate/energy policy, you answered your first question, which is why would you leave being chief of staff, which I enjoyed, but just so you know, Marty, I consider being very fortunate in life to have worked for two presidents I believe in, who I like, who I think did significant things. But being mayor of the city of Chicago is the single best job I've ever had, even when you combine all of those in Chicago, because you actually can not just discuss something, but actually make something happen. And so when you look at what I think we're doing in the city, I think we are, in my view, at the most fundamental level, refuting the notion that if you have an environmental policy, it's anti-job creation and business. Or that if you're a pro-business and pro-job growth, that somehow it has to come at the expense of what I call not environmental so much as quality of life issues. And I would note, without trying to list accomplishments, but I would like you to know that The Economist magazine rated Chicago the #1 city in the United States for policies that deal with environmental challenges. And I really do believe that as people over the last 30 years left the cities of Chicago, you're in one of the great migrations across the globe, but also across the United States, of people back into a city. And how you handle that, what investments you make in infrastructure, not just physical, but how you handle that migration back, improve the quality of life and the sustainability of the city, will determine whether this is a momentary phenomenon or a permanent phenomenon. So a couple things to put in perspective. Chicago is unique because of our lakefront. We're the only city on the Great Lakes that never industrialized its Great Lake. We have open area, open beaches. We had another waterfront called the river, which we really never had a policy for. And that's where our industrial highway was. And I claimed in 2011 I wanted Chicago to develop a second waterfront, the river, which actually, if you include Calumet, is longer than the lakefront. Second, it also runs throughout the entire city of Chicago and neighborhoods and communities throughout the city. But we were also the only city left with 2 coal-fired power plants operating within a city limit, both in Little Village and in Pilsen. Predominantly, if you're not from the city, Hispanic communities, working class communities. I told the then energy operator, we can make it easy or we can make it hard. Do you want a ticker tape parade or some other type of public event? You're not getting the joke. You guys are really serious around here. Wow. Good luck with the conference here. Don't worry, this is not a peer review paper I'm submitting, okay? So in the end of the day, they shut the 2 coal-fired power plants. We ended the industrial traffic, or major industrial traffic in the city on the river. We've opened up 4 boathouses for canoeing, kayaking, and sculling. And we're now having a river walk. Half of it is already open. The other half will be finished by the summer of 2016. Since the announcement of that river walk, we have $8 billion of private development on the riverfront in the city of Chicago. So I would also note to you that 20 years ago in the river, there were 7 species. Today, there are 70 species returning and back and vibrant in the city of Chicago River. I can't say they're healthy. I would not recommend anything else, but there are 70 species in the river, where only 20 years ago, there were literally 7, down to single digits. So the strategy of creating a second waterfront has worked. Shutting the 2 coal-fired power plants where we had the greatest amount of asthma emergency room visits by children has declined. So that has worked for the city. Second, we started this on the public. We've now challenged the private. We have 50 million square feet under retrofit in the city of Chicago. It will be, when all in, a 20% reduction in our emissions as a city. We updated our taxi laws, which hadn't been updated, and about 70%, I'm saying about, 70% of our taxi fleet now is hybrid. We were 10th city on bike lanes. Last week was an announcement. We're number 2 city. We completed my goal in my first term of 103 miles of interconnected bike lanes in the city, protected. And we announced another 50 miles over the next 4 years of both improved and protected bike lanes. While it's great environmental policy, The first place I put a bike lane was on Kinsey Street in Chicago. That's right next to Merchandise Mart on the back end of it. We then, Merchandise Mart used to be the biggest apparel store in the United States. It's now one of the largest high-tech buildings in America. 1871, our innovation space that we created right there in Merchandise Mart, just won last night the #1 innovation space in the United States of America, and it's not a coincidence. It's right next to the first bike lane that we put in the city of Chicago. We also then created a green infrastructure fund for stormwater. I think I'm looking at Karen, I'm doing this by memory, but it's about $40 to $50 million over a 4-year window doing green infrastructure, mainly for stormwater collection in the city of Chicago throughout the city. We added 1,000 acres of parkland on a base of 8,000. So the city had 8,000 acres of parkland in the city. We have added 1,000 to that in 4 years. And of that 8,000, 200 acres are nature preserve in the city of Chicago. One of the things I'm most, in addition to proud of, is what used to be a airport in downtown is now 40 acres of nature preserve in the downtown city of Chicago. And if you go up to Rose Hill, they now have a 25, when I opened it, we have a 20 acres of nature preserve in a neighborhood. And when we cut the ribbon of it, it has a pond, it has a walking, biking area, et cetera. There were 2 hawks flying. So all of this, and it's not an accident, that homes next to park and open parkland are greater in value than homes that are not. It's so investing in open space, parkland improves the home value and quality of life in a city. Investing in bike lanes help you bring a type of workforce that, in my view, drive the economic opportunity in the city of Chicago. Turning your river from what used to be a sewage dump into a river walk has added to $8 billion in private sector development, let alone the environmental healthcare improvements in the people and communities that lived in and around Little Village and Pilsen. These are just some of the examples I wanted to talk about, because in this way, I believe the notion, when you are now beginning to see a renaissance in cities across the globe, also here in the United States, a return of not only companies, but families to seeing a city as the better alternative. How we invest in that for the long term, what we do not only creates a sustainable model, it improves the quality of life and the economics, and I think it also refutes the idea that you have to make a false choice between economic development and the quality of life associated with good environmental energy policy. I left out, and I know a lot of you are people in the energy industry, utility industry, I would left out, which I also think is central for the city of Chicago. It is working with ComEd, we made some changes to the law. They're on the 4th year of a 5th-year plan to be the largest city in the United States to have a smart grid, smart meter installation program throughout the city of Chicago. And we changed the legislation. I'm doing this by memory. I think it was in 2012. We're in the 4th year of not only that build-out, where ComEd is making their improvements, but also by 2018, every home will have then the smart meter at their home and the ability to manage their use of energy. I would like to note that the meter is also being built in the city of Chicago, so we are that's an inside joke between me and ComEd. It was a very competitive bid that won right here in the city of Chicago. But I think on every level, from whether it's a utility that's making great investments in the physical infrastructure, the job training, and then the smart grid, to closing the 2 coal-fired power plants, and to also then from bike lanes to the river, all of that, in my view, not only improves the quality of life. I'd also note then one other thing on the economic front. Method, I don't know if you know the household product, is pretty incredible company from both what the product it makes, but how it makes it from an environmental standpoint, the factory. They decided, it came down to Battle Creek in Michigan and Chicago. They ended up putting the factory, 100 jobs here in Chicago. It's their only US-based factory here that they run here in Chicago. It is the only factory in the United States, I'm doing this by memory, is platinum rated. And they now have the largest green roof farm in the United States of America. And I think having all these, we call them environmental policies, but sustainable policies, made a company that manufactures decide to come to a city like Chicago. And the other effort, and then I'm going to just shut up, is, and Karen reminded me of this, we now also, if you buy a home or a condo, we, through the MLS ratings, your energy usage of that home or house or condo is now listed, and in bringing a level of transparency to energy use in that area. So it's a comprehensive strategy, it's a comprehensive approach, and I believe in making Chicago a smart city. I believe in the policies of investing in kind of both infrastructure, technology to hard infrastructure in a way that is sustainable and pro-growth. And I think if you look at it from every level, even the people that companies, more traditional companies, are recruiting, the quality of life and the things that the city value are things that millennials are now looking for. And if you're looking at your own bottom line, your own self-interest, it'd be nuts not to have a policy like that. One other request, we just passed our budget last week. Try not to spend as much time in here as I want you to spend out there spending money. Thank you.